In bid to ensure sufficient supply of crude oil to local refineries, the federal government had ordered oil producers and refiners in the country to provide monthly price quotes on crude oil supply. The Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, that's NUPRC, in a statement, actually it has agreed with oil producers to work towards sustainable supply of crude oil to local refineries under a market-determined pricing system. Now, the Commission explains that the aim is to ensure that while the operators do business optimally, the refineries are not starved to feed stock. NUPRC noted that the producers under the umbrella of the Oil Producers Trade section of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry have agreed to concede to a framework that would be mutually beneficial with the aim of ensuring that local refineries are not strangulated due to off-the-cuff prices. So the Commission chief, who actually spoke at a meeting in Abuja, has expressed the need for a rule of engagement to ensure that the pricing model from the oil producers do not hinder the domestic refineries. And that's why he has directed producers and refiners to provide the NUPRC with cargo price quotes on crude oil supply and delivery for effective monitoring and regulation of transactions amongst the parties. Yes, let's get Dr. John's thoughts on this one. Federal government orders producers to publish monthly supply quotes.
I think this point was emphasized before now. You know, the NNPC is very corrupt in Nigeria. NNPC is very corrupt. If you are a diligent businessman, people should be able to know how many barrels of crude oil you are producing, and at what market price you are selling the crude oil. When it's on a daily basis, there should be a record on a daily basis. Fueling station operators provide a record of what you supply and what they sell. So, except we are deviating from this standard, NNPC should insist. It is not even the work of the president. NNPC should insist that these statistics should be the data of supply and what we are selling should be made public. Now, before the time of Olusegun Obasanjo, even from the Federation Allocation Accounts Committee, from FAC, monies allocated to states and local governments were not published. But when he brought in Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, she now drove that process of making everything to be transparent. Today, if you want to know how much is being distributed to states or local governments, with a click of the internet, maybe 1-2 clicks, you arrive at the figures. So if something as sensitive as monies divided or shared among the three arms of government, the three layers of government, the federal government, the states, and the local governments can be made public, why can't we know how much petrol we are producing, how much crude oil we are producing, and at what price we are selling? This data should be made public. Is this
even something that we should be talking about?
Somebody should not even press for this. It's a normal thing.
Because there was actually a time we were told, oh, we don't know how much crude oil we're producing, and it was a very laughable condition at that time. Let's get your thoughts, Ambassador.
Well, I think it's a good thing, probably because the federal government is no longer enjoying the unusual business transactions. Hence, you know that for you to transact in every business, you must know what you have. And I'm very much sure that the federal government used to know. And I think, like Doctor have emphasized, and I wish to reiterate, that it's obvious that the federal government now wants the issue of local refineries to survive because of their recent, decisions. But if you also listen to what the oil dealers are saying, producers, we have to come up with a framework. In other words, if there was a framework, it has failed. So maybe they need to review the framework on how it will be mutually beneficiary, I think is also a good thing. But again, my encouragement is that let these things be published like the federal government have ordered on a monthly basis. It's just like the issue of IGRO. It is difficult for state government to publish the sources of the IGRO. All you hear, including federal government, all you hear is with internally generated revenue 15 billion.
Why do you think that's the case?
Now, yes,
Why do you think
because
that's the case?
of the unusual, ill transactions that state governments, benefit from IGR, especially the governors, with all due respect.
Allegedly.
Not all the governors anyway, allegedly. So I want to feel that if we must trust the government, our leaders, the sources of our revenues. For instance, if the oil, like the federal government is saying, the producers of the oil, Ajip, they produce also a volume of crude. Total produce this level of crude, this one and that. Let it be known. Then you can now say from this, so was allocated for this, so was allocated to this company, so was allocated to this refinery, so was, exported.
But with all of the cases of corruption here and there in the different sectors that we have in Nigeria, do you actually see this being or making it really as transparent as she should be? Are we still going to have hiccups and hitches here and there with this, even when they get to publish? Is it enough? Is it enough to stop the corruption cases that they're alleged to have been going on with the crude oil producers?
You see, at least Nigerians can now know that this is what happened. It's just like issue of state allocations and local government allocations. If my state is being given 15 billion, for instance, and then I'm not seeing what is commensurate with that 15 billion, at least I should be able to know that something is wrong with the management and appropriation of that resources. So I think the publicity of these crude transactions is going to also aid Nigerians to know if actually the resources, the management, the transactions in our oil sector is okay, so that we will not just be living in assumption to say that, oh, they are corrupt, they are criminals, but at least it will aid us with more vital information to be able to hold our leaders accountable. So I think it's not a bad idea.
All right.
Yes, you know what happens in the crude oil industry. The companies, the multinational corporations are also complicit in this. Oh. Because yes, based on the, they're operating within the domestic business environment and the regulatory framework we have. Now, at the point of production, at the point of drilling this oil, the crude oil, it seems to me that most of these multinational corporations have not really declared the exact barrels of millions of barrels of oil they are drilling. That is the first level of corruption. The second level of corruption is when they want to declare to the NNPC concerning what they have, the number of barrels they have drilled and so on. That's the second layer of corruption, where there's some unscrupulous elements will go there, do deal with them, and still reduce what they have produced and take money from them. Then those at the center, at the NNPC, are also there to take. So there is no transparency.
Everywhere.
There is no transparency in our oil industry. There's no transparency, and that is why today you see sometimes even the presidency may not be aware. Sometimes they say Nigeria is producing $1.5 million barrels per day. Sometimes they are producing more than that. But that is what perhaps they have declared. So this daily reporting...
These reports are not being published and probably are not there, then how do we even know
it is opaque.
How much we produce?
It is
daily?
like a market woman who... you go to the market, you know you bought, you don't know how much you bought your wares, you go there, you sell it, you came back without knowing anything. So everything about it...
you report that you sold this particular
everything
amount.
about the oil industry, because of the quantity of money, the quantum of money it is generating, it is subject to a lot of fraud.
I saw an MBS report yesterday that in recent times the crude oil industry is actually contributing about 5% to Nigeria's GDP. And then that same report stated that in 2024, agriculture has produced or contributed about 20 to 25% to Nigeria's GDP. And it begs the question, then why so much focus on oil more than agriculture, when according to MBS, agriculture as a whole has contributed more in recent times than crude oil?
Are they talking about 85% or 5%? In fact, the bulk of our foreign exchange comes from crude oil.
Exactly, that was
and no more, no less. That situation has not changed from the 1960s, 70s, when we had the oil boom, to the early 80s and so on. The situation has not changed. If at the moment they stop producing crude oil for 1 week, Nigeria's economy collapses automatically.
That is one thing that we know. But why do you think the main focus is still, why are we not looking at diversifying? Why are we not paying that much attention to agriculture and other sectors?
I think what the person or whosoever that wants to propose that, if actually wants to encourage the issue of diversification, trying to say that agriculture can actually give us more resources, more income in running our country. I think it's not a bad idea. But as of today, nobody can say that the sustenance of this country, economy, is not on crude oil. It's never on agriculture for now, because we know the kind of agriculture, the level of agricultural provision. We don't have enough food to eat first. Is it they want to export and make more money that we are talking about? We have food shortage. We have shortage of agricultural productions. So on which record or which facts the person is relying on? So I think it's...
Now back to the question now. Why do you think that we're not, paying so much attention on diversifying?
I think the issue of diversification is about really encouraging local, business investors, because government alone cannot really diversify. For instance, the real estate is one area that government can encourage, because if you check most developed nations, real estate is one major source of income, because government builds and then citizens and visitors begin to acquire those facilities and begin to pay revenues and taxation back to government. So real estate is a big area that government can leverage on. So
why is the government not leveraging on it as much as
now?
It should?
If you brings down your eyes very well, business, private individuals are the ones that are going into real estate for now massively, unlike before, in a more professional way. We have the issue of manufacturing. The issue of manufacturing. Recently, we heard about our brother Kubana, setting up, what do you call this, the popular keke, stuff in Lagos. You have the Innocent Motors. You have different... Nigerians are very resourceful people. Now, if our resources or our resourcefulness could be encouraged and supported, giving it the rightful environment, the diversification we are talking about, we're already in it. But for us to improve and make it a global business, which is not all about consumption, because for now, Nigeria is being known as a consuming nation and not a production nation, which is also affecting our source of income. So once we get to that level of diversification you are talking about, improving on it, will become a producing nation.
Ambassador, I see how you went through that question.
Let me add a little.
Yes.
You know, recently you discovered that Nigeria's economy is being diversified to a little extent in 4 main areas. 1, agriculture. 2, manufacturing. 3, the telecoms industry and transportation.
Yeah.
We can also add real estate. In the area of real estate, you know, I don't know if you visited Lagos recently. The Eco-Atlantic city, that concept is to bridge the housing deficit existing in Nigeria. Now, if such the Eco-Atlantic city project is replicated all over the country, it will do a lot to close the housing deficit. Agriculture is also another area. In fact, China, most of the foreign direct investment we are getting now from agriculture in the area of, you know, even development of ports, building of roads and so on. All these are areas. But the only problem we have with diversifying our economy is that a good percentage of the expertise is still coming from our advanced countries, China, America, and so on. And that is why, even within the, you know, our domestic investment ecosystem, we still have challenges, power challenges there. The challenge of infrastructure is there. So because of the challenges, some of them find it difficult to operate. And that is why you see this idea of companies, multinational corporations leaving Nigeria.
How is the expertise of these, the expertise coming from foreign countries like you've said? How is that a problem?
One of the aims of foreign direct investment is that when these companies come to Nigeria, they will transfer part of the technology to our workforce, train some people and so on. While this training is going on, I don't think they have trained a substantial number of people in fabricating machines and so on, apart from a few of them in the southeast, in Newi and some other areas, where even this ordinary canal business, we have not fabricated enough machines that can press the canal. So if you go to this, you know, Chinese technology is still there, American technology is there, the UK is still there, and so on. And that is the problem we have in Nigeria. That's the problem with diversifying our economy. So while we are trying to diversify, we have some internal contradictions within Nigeria. Our inability to supply power, our inability to build good roads. If you just travel by the East-West Road near Wokobe there, you will spend close to 2 hours and so on.
We'll talk about
power is there, roads.
That's why you want to come in there.
Yeah, I think because of current trending right now, I used to say the use of foreign experts, you know, is not too encouraging. But looking at global development, I think it's not a crime, it's a good thing, because Nigerians are also being imported or exported to become resource persons in other countries that are growing. We are still a growing nation, so we need developed people who are more than us in a particular area of investment. But I think what Doc is trying to emphasize is that the local Nigerians should also be trained to be able to man most of these things under a period of time, not relying so much on the foreign master. So if you should be trained at a point and then also begin
what Ambassador Eki said earlier about diversifying now in the government, where he said that we cannot rely solely on the government to diversify. We also have to come in, and Nigerians are already coming in, that what the government just needs to do is to make the environment enabling environment, provide an enabling environment for us to diversify.
Yes.
Then what about the government now?
The essence of, you know, creating that conducive environment is entirely government's responsibility. We used to have, in the past, we used to have property rights, intellectual property rights, or when a foreigner comes in or when a foreign company comes in, we have to build their industries and so on, how to, you know, fix all these things. So government needs to work on, number one, apart from the issue of power and good roads, government needs to work on other infrastructure And the regulatory framework, yesterday I wrote a note to somebody about double taxation. In most cases, when manufacturers are making efforts to manufacture something for the Nigerian public, you see them being subjected to double taxation. In Rivers State, it was yesterday or 2 days ago, there was a government announcement that some revenue collectors are now collecting, they have served notice to some people to collect between 15 to 40,000 naira. And that notice is not coming from the government.
Okay, so, let me ask you now, sorry to cut you off, but let's stay on this. Now, when we talk about the government diversify, or we want the government to diversify, we want the government to pay more attention to agriculture the way they're paying more attention to crude oil, what exactly are we expecting from the government in that regard? What
we're expecting is, I've mentioned 2 things. Power.
No, when we say diversify, when we say pay attention to the agricultural sector, when we say let's look at our solid minerals, let's look at this and that, what are we expecting from the government? What are we expecting them to do that will make us to believe that, oh, the government is actually paying attention to diversifying?
In the area of agriculture, let me say a thing or two. In the area of agriculture, you know that you cannot do anything without the locals. So, you know, sometimes state governments take loans, agri loans from the CBN, and this loan is used for something else. A good example is Bayelsa State. In Bayelsa State, sometimes loans are taken from the CBN, agri loans. It is titled agri loans. Yet the money is deployed to other sectors, or perhaps the money finding its way into the pockets of individuals.
Allegedly.
So in
that's an allegation.
It's an allegation. I'm not mentioning it.
Yeah, so you have to state it.
Providing power, then working on the regulatory framework. This one is very important. The laws guiding a particular business. That is the work of the federal government. So the moment we are able to get the regulatory framework right and supply power, power is a major hiccup in the industry. So if I'm going to spend my money to supply power, I'll spend my money to construct roads.
So we're not expecting the government to set up infrastructures.
No, that is what I'm saying.
We're not expecting the government to. No, I'm not talking about roads. I'm not talking about all of those.
What other infrastructure?
We have talked about all of that. We're not expecting the government to set up probably research institutes for agriculture or fund farmers, fund the research institutes that we have available and all of that. We're not. Are we not looking at that? When you say the government should diversify, what are you expecting? I know you have already talked about, oh, give us electricity, give us good roads, yes. But when we say the government should focus on other sectors as much as they do on crude oil, what are we talking about? What are we expecting them to set up?
Well, if you ask me, well, Nigeria is already diversifying. It's just that the managers of these processes, to a reasonable extent, are not very sincere and faithful. You will agree with me that the hospital management in Nigeria are generating revenues. The treatment in our public hospitals are not free. So how much are the hospitals accounting for what they generate? You will agree with me to a reasonable extent that the security operatives are generating resources. Am I communicating? Yes, the law says that bail is free, but we know that to a reasonable extent, most bails are not completely free to a reasonable extent. So the security operatives are also generating resources, but it's not called revenue because they don't remit to the government.
So you think our teaching hospitals do not remit to the government?
What I'm trying to say is that most arms of government are generating resources, but they are not remitting because there is no law requiring them to remit what they are generating. But we Nigerians know that there are resources that goes into those sectors.
Do you agree with that? That no. They're not remitting to the government?
There are laws that when you generate revenue, you remit it. This thing happens at virtually all levels. I have always queried the IGR base of so many states. Because apart from collecting taxes and so on, there are some conditional monies they receive from sometimes the IOCs, sometimes the multinational corporations, sometimes as a result of the investment the state government has done. For instance, if the state says, look, they are selling shares in Port Harcourt Electricity Distribution Company, and the state decides to buy shares there, you know, the shares you are buying will yield what? Dividends. And that money will be collected by the state. But in most cases, it is already visible, a carouseller, the kiosk owner, all those are the things they publish.
So it's not
there are laws.
It's not a problem of the money not being remitted.
No, it is a problem of these people collecting the money and not remitting it. They cover up. And that becomes their personal money.
Which people are you talking about?
We are talking about sometimes the revenue, sometimes government, sometimes the governors themselves. They don't declare what they receive from all these other sources.
So it's not the
only thing you hear is that, oh, FAC, we got 29 billion in the month of May, in the month of April. That's what you hear. But other resources internally received, you don't see them.
Oh.
You see, like I emphasized that we are already diversifying, but government needs to encourage investors. Right now, like we have discussed before, that investors are leaving the country. And then the ones who are still here with the goods, Nigerian government needs to reduce her taxation system so that the little businesses that we have right now can grow to become a revenue derivation source, again in a better way in the future. But if you muzzle these little ones that are available, trying to come up, and they shut down. There was a time the owner of Innocent Motors wanted to relocate
to Ghana.
To Ghana. Why? It's because of the huge taxation.
When you say we're already diversifying, are you talking about all sorts of people, the individuals, or the government?
You know, government alone cannot...
No, no, it's a question now. When you say we're already diversifying, who are you making reference? Individuals? Don't tell me it's general. Don't tell me it's a nation. That's a nation.
Good.
Are you taking reference to individuals, or are you making reference to the government?
No, I want us to understand that there is really no difference between government and individuals.
Okay, let's move on to the next story now.